All right, well, good evening, everyone. Is my mic on? Is this working? Okay, not that I need it, but... Oh, very good. Okay. All right, well, first, I just want to thank you for the invitation and also just for your civic engagement and activism all year round. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you. Again, my name is Ayanna Pressley. Since 2010, I've had the honor of serving as one of your 4 at-large Boston City Councilors, actualizing what I believe are our shared values and vision for the city of Boston. When I joined the council, I created a new standing policy committee, which I chair. It's a committee on healthy women, families, and communities, working on those issues that I believe on the municipal level we had been derelict in addressing. And I really have dedicated myself to bringing what I think is a unique perspective and a strength of advocacy for those issues that break at the bonds of community, erode at the fabric of us that we had not been addressing, issues that disproportionately and adversely impact women and girls. We're 53% of the population, so I work on those issues like human trafficking, teen pregnancy, sexual violence, domestic assault, advocating domestic violence, sexual assault, and advocating for more women in police and fire and the trades. And then, I am, aspirational here, so working on some big systemic issues to break cycles of poverty, to reduce violence in all of its forms, and to reduce trauma in our communities. Some of the issues that I'm focused on, right now that I'm very excited to share a little bit more with you about are school food, my advocacy in that space. SPED transitions for the 4,000 Boston Public School students between the ages of 14 and 22 that are receiving special education services. And then finally, liquor license reform. Okay.
You even had a few seconds.
Okay. Well, I cut down on my effusive praise for everything. Well, we have to push and demand more from our developers. So one of the things that I've been working with developers, advocates, and the mayor's office with is, pushing to increase the IDP. Currently that's at 15%. I think it should be at 25%. Thank you. And also, the payout is just not a high enough amount. The developers would rather, pay that than actually build more affordable housing. So we certainly do have a crisis. I do believe in order to maintain the diversity of neighborhoods like Jamaica Plain, which I think is so critically important that we have that socioeconomic, racial, and cultural diversity, that we do need to continue to move towards greater density in our development. But we've got to find a way to do that in partnership without, finger pointing that gets us ultimately to a greater diversity. But in terms of affordability, let me just say this. 21.9% of the people of the city of Boston are living in poverty. 33.5% of those households are single female-headed households, and 26% of children in the city of Boston are living in poverty. So if women are not getting equal pay for equal work, if people are not working at a living wage, all these things have a trickle-down effect. And we don't want to be in a situation where, the rents are just so high that people are paying, 80% of whatever their salary might be towards rent. That does not build wealth into our communities because then people don't have purchasing power to support these restaurants that I'm so passionate about seeing in every neighborhood in the city of Boston.
Great.
Can I say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. That was just 30 seconds.
Okay, all right, great. So let me just say a little bit. I just want to talk about the BRA a little bit more. Unfortunately, it predates my tenure on the council. It is incredibly frustrating that they have no accountability to the council, that, we have no oversight authority of the BRA, which is very frustrating. But in addition to pushing for an increase in the IDP, in addition to looking to increase the cash buyout amount, there are 2 things that I'm really excited about pursuing. One, this is the first time that I'm ever mentioning this in a public space. I really believe as the founder and chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities that healthy community does not happen by accident. It doesn't happen organically. We have to be intentional about building healthy communities. And one of the things that I'm pursuing, given the fact that our zoning code is so incredibly outdated, is can we develop zoning that intentionally builds healthy community? Can we agree that fundamentally there are things that nurture and foster and build healthy community? I can tell you, I don't want to see any more Metro PCSs. I don't know how many nails, I don't know, I frequent them, but I don't know how many nail salons, we need in a neighborhood. I don't want to see another Dollar Tree. You know, I don't want to see any more check cashing facilities. You know, can we just agree that within a certain radius that we know what the recipe is to intentionally build healthy communities? So, you know, this is something that I've just started to percolate on. I would love to have your feedback. And also in that vein, another effort that I've been working on developers with, which they're very excited about as I have this discussion throughout the city because of the predictability that it would afford them, which would make the rents less expensive, is to pursue a standard community benefits agreement. Again, development in our neighborhoods should be specialized, but are there some things fundamentally that we can agree every neighborhood in the city of Boston stands to benefit from, and can we have a baseline community benefits agreement?
Yeah. Other country and some other cities around the country are pursuing a $15 an hour minimum wage. Is that something we should be pursuing?
Absolutely.
In Boston? Okay.
Yeah. I've been working with and supporting that campaign from the very beginning and will continue to do so. No, I didn't support it. And it's not because I don't believe I work hard and deserve to be compensated for that. No, I didn't support it because there's no predictability to it. And we have accountability to taxpayers. You know, so not only are people, given the numbers that I just shared with you, the growing poverty in the city of Boston, it just didn't seem right, given all the deficits facing us as a city, to increase to an amount that elevated without any prompt. You know, there needs to be a mechanism. So whether you're going to make that, if you're going to link that to cost of living, they're just, you know, I feel that voters are deserve some predictability instead of just a spontaneous decision. So I did vote against. I was against the original amount that was proposed, and did partner with Councilor Matt O'Malley to propose that we tie it to cost of living.
Talk about your position on bringing the Olympics to Boston, and in addition to whether you support that or
yes,
oppose it,
I'm ready for my close-up on the Olympics. I hope you're watching. Okay. Okay.
What you think are potentially the best benefits and what potentially would be the biggest?
I don't know what order I'm going to talk about it, but let me just do my thing. Okay, so when it comes to the Olympics, so first let me just say this. I'm an incredibly aspirational person, even occasionally patriotic. And the fact that I am highly skeptical and cynical about the games coming here, you know, certainly does not negate that in any way. The question has been from the beginning, not can Boston host the games, should we? And so far they have proven to be what I feared they would be, which is a huge distraction. You know, so I am a yes if, but I have a lot of conditions. The first is, you know, while we're talking about playing host to a world community, I want us to tell the truth about the fact that for people who live here 365 days a year, many of those people do not feel seen and feel included. So before we talk about playing host to a world community, let's talk about including the diverse community that already lives here in the city of Boston. And given the fact that we are #3 in wealth inequality in the country and #1, the fastest gentrifying city in the country, that says to me that we have much work to do when it comes to not just celebrating diversity, but honoring it. And that has everything to do with shared power. So if the if Boston 2024 can come up with a comprehensive diversity and inclusion plan that addresses that, we will never close this wealth and inequality gap if we're not creating an equity and opportunity for minority and women-owned businesses, for procurement and contracting opportunities. I know that we deserve an equity and opportunity to benefit from the successes of this city and this Commonwealth, but we deserve an equity and opportunity to contribute to those successes. So that's the #1 thing that I'm looking to see from them, is a D&I, well, I won't rank them, but that's something that matters to me, is a diversity and inclusion plan, because, you know, we have not proven that we can do this successfully in Boston. So there's no models for me to look at to say we can scale up to prove this is going to be an incredible opportunity. The second thing is they've got to come clean about the cost overruns. You know, obviously, you know, from the original bid that was proposed and then what was told at community meetings, there's huge disparity. I'm looking forward to their 2.0 version to see if they've actively listened in these community spaces and adjusted the plan accordingly. And then finally, just for the purposes of time, the other issue that I'm concerned about is an issue I've been working on for some 4 years, and that is human trafficking. And what we have seen is a correlation and a spike in human trafficking where there are mega sporting events. So those are the things I'm looking for: cost overruns, a diversity and inclusion plan, a plan to work with advocates to potentially mitigate any uptick and human trafficking that could occur from a mega sporting event at this level. But the bottom line is, people are saying it presents an unprecedented opportunity for a public and private partnership. But, you know, if we couldn't do that for the late night tea, which is about much more than a bar crawl for young professionals after a night downtown, and we don't get that that's about our economy and our workforce, if we can't do it for late night tea, for people that are here 365 days a year, I don't know how we're going to do an unprecedented public-private partnership for 3 weeks. You know, one of the things that I've been working closely with the police commissioner on and the chief, and let me just say this, what's different between, you know, for Boston in comparison to many other cities, I'll just, you know, speak for, you know, this council under this current administration. We have great access and communication with the commissioner and the chief. You know, anytime there is a violent crime, a shooting, a police-involved shooting, we're on the short list of people that they're calling to let know that right away. So that's great that we have improved communication. It's also great that we see a greater diversity in the force. However, just because we're better than we used to be doesn't mean we're still not who we can be. And, you know, the threshold, the bar has been pretty low. You know, so I do believe strongly in the benefits of community policing, and I think community policing is strengthened when you have a police force, you know, throughout the ranks that reflects the diversity of the city. I think a civil service exam does in no way fully encompasses what someone can bring to community policing. So one, I support the restoration of the cadet program. We've seen in the past that was a very successful feeder, you know, into the police force. But I want to make sure it doesn't become sort of a patronage thing based upon who people know. And so one of the things I've asked them to consider as we advance that is that they look to census data and to have that cadet program reflect the percentages according to the census. I know we can't do quotas, but if it has proven as a successful feeder, that's something we need to look at. The other thing is that want to make sure within the academy and ongoing that we are doing race bias testing. You know, we all carry racial bias and prejudices. It just usually goes unchecked. And I'm not vilifying the Boston Police Department. I actually think this is something that every city agency, you know, every entity in this city could benefit from because we all carry those biases. And the only way that you can confront those biases is to identify them. And so I really am going to continue to push forward within the academy training that we have race bias testing and ongoing, not just for, you know, new officers, but ongoing. So those would be, oh, and a civilian review. I support an independent civilian review board, absolutely. So civilian review board, restoration of the cadet program with the class demographics being commensurate with census data, continue to strengthen community policing and race bias testing, not only for the academy, but for all officers. But again, this is only because you asked me about the BPD. I believe every single agency in the city of Boston stands to benefit from that kind of testing. No, I think the issue is just that it is very difficult, you know, given the gang culture of Boston, you know, in that it isn't territorial. It really is pervasive and everywhere. And often, you know, you could have multiple gangs on a block. So it becomes much more challenging to dismantle them. But I'll just say this, in terms of youth development work, which I really see as prevention work, I think too much of our youth programming has been focused on prevention and not enough on intervention. You know, there are just a population of kids that we just give up on, you know, and that's problematic. And that's why, you know, we've been pushing for an increase in the youth jobs age. I think that should be 22. I think it could even be 24. You know, I think that's important. I think you have some concerns about whether or not the Boston police are working. So here's the last thing that I want to say just about, you know, young people and gangs. I mean, obviously all violence is a confluence of other social determinants. You know, poverty is chief amongst them. Disparity in educational outcomes is chief amongst them. We have a failed reentry system. You know, we have people that are being released from prison that are being discharged, if you will, to homeless shelters. And then we tell them, now go get a job. You know, and if you don't go to get a job, you're not really interested in living a legit life. You know, this has everything to do with opportunity. So this is about, you know, political will. This is about leadership. And this is about investment and saying, we're not going to give up on these kids. And that means we need more intervention programming. And we also need, I need to just tell the truth, There are a lot of programs that are getting funding that we don't audit, that there's no metric, no evaluative tool. They say they're working with opportunity youth, the most proven and at-risk youth, and we have no metric as to whether or not they are doing that effectively. I do have to commend Mayor Walsh that he did recently absorb the Street Safe Boston program, formerly run out of the Boston Foundation, which has had great success and does have an evaluative tool. So we need more programs like that. I'm not sure, but I certainly think that that's a great idea. I love the idea of vouchers, and that is something that we want to explore. I'll be, shortly I'll be doing a hearing, exactly about that. But, I don't know exactly what's the best way to finance it, but I do see a legitimate need there, and I do think that's one of the things that we should be considering. Can I just take a moment just to say something about Long Island, if that's okay, while we're talking about housing? I really just want us to be careful. I feel in a lot of the spaces about the Long Island shelter, we're quick to sort of prop this up as this celebrated shelter model. And, I've volunteered at, Woods Mellon, spent a great deal of time at Pine Street Inn and other places. I'm focused on the entire system, but I have a specific focus on women because there's an incredible inequality in the services provided to homeless women. And even with treatment beds, we see there are, as many as 8 treatment beds for men, and comparatively there would be 1 for a woman. And that's, we have a crisis. But the goal here, is not to return to a celebrated shelter model. The goal here is permanent housing. I think the larger issue there is just that our zoning code is incredibly outdated. I have an example of a zoning code issue that we worked on. It doesn't speak totally to your issue, but a little bit it does. There is on Newbury Street in the Back Bay, a art gallery, the Pucker Gallery. I don't know if you've ever been there. They've been there for decades. I think, it's a destination location, and they were looking to move just 1 block over, and they were denied their move because an art gallery on that part of Newbury Street was considered a forbidden use. And right. That was our response. If you know the Pucker Gallery, they've been there decades. But, again, this is why it's so important, not only that we are available to our constituents, but actively listening to them and then advocating accordingly. So, what we did, having learned that information, is do some digging. And then we said, we need to make art galleries an allowed use for every neighborhood. And so we offered an amendment to the zoning code because, again, I don't want to create a situation where we have a disparity in terms of access to culture and enrichment opportunities. That is, a dated and antiquated code that I'm sure at the time, there was a very specific reason as to why. But it's outdated. And, now our amendment has passed the BRA, right? And we're waiting for final the zoning board. Okay, art galleries for everyone. Okay. So, I think, that's the issue, is that oftentimes we're not aware of the disparity. And so we're at a community and hear from our constituents. So that's what we realize. The larger issue here to me is that the zoning code is incredibly dated and antiquated.
So I have a couple other questions for you
Okay.
that were prepared in advance. And first is, we've asked the other candidates about the Community Preservation Act, which is
I support it.
tenants are being priced out of a house and being evicted for that reason, that would go immediately to arbitration. And then maybe also to put in some tax incentives for landlords who keep their rents low over time.
No, I definitely think that's something to pursue or consider. Again, within this larger context of affordable housing, I want to just give a shout out very quickly to Right to the City and City Life for their advocacy in this space. I think it's unfortunately it's a necessary consideration given the affordable housing crisis.
I'm just wondering if there's anything that City Council can do to either maybe have inspection services open on Saturday just one time to write the tickets, or like, what can we do about those protesters?
I don't know. So it's that's something we'll have to take back. You know, I mean that's very upsetting. So I don't know what we can do. You know, say for me personally going out there, which I'd be happy to do. So we'll have to circle back with ISD on that, and perhaps BPD as well. So we'll be in touch, Katie, on that. Okay. Well, how about I do a poem?
I didn't give it to other
How
people.
about I talk about school food? No one wants to talk about school food. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so this is an issue that I'm very passionate about. You know, again, given the number of children within the city of Boston living in poverty, 70% of their calories will be consumed, you know, at a Boston public school. And the food that is currently being provided these students is not dense in its nutrition. It is not supporting cognitive development. You know, the bottom line is, in the same way that I often talk about trauma, and until we address trauma, you're going to have an achievement gap. A hungry child cannot learn. We've made great strides in destigmatizing the issue and just making, you know, free, you know, breakfast available to everyone. But now our next fight is the quality of the food that is being served. It's a huge waste issue. Not only is it not nutritious and supporting cognitive development, it is also not palatable. And so the students are throwing the food away. So it's huge food waste. So I just want to let you know what I'm pursuing right now is a feasibility study over a period of 3 months, because all of our schools are different. Some of them have school kitchens, some of them don't. I want to pursue a feasibility study to find out if we should return to a central kitchen that is locally sourced. Because the reason the food is not palatable and is not nutritious is because it's being outsourced. It's the equivalent of, you know, when we used to get a meal on an airplane, you know, it's like airplane food. Yeah. So